Tes, we're going to begin just to do a little chazara what we started yesterday in Daf Chesam and Beis, because we left off really in the middle of a question. So they asked the Shaila in the Beis Medrash, if a person says, Kol nechosai, a person writes to his Eved, writes on a document that says, Kol nechosai knuya lecha, that all my property is acquired to you. So when he says all the property is acquired to you, he implies as well the Eved is also acquired to himself. So now the Eved brings this shtar and he says b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So the question is, what's the din over here? And what's the question? The question is, when the shtar has just general words, kol nechosai knuya lecha, does that go on the Eved and on the Kinyan as well? So Abaye says, since he's kind of himself, since he's believed to say b'fanei nechtav to be mekayim the shtar to free himself, so he's also believed to say that the Adin gave him all the shtar as well. And basically, according to Abaye, since b'fanei nichtav helps in regards to the shichur, he's also believed to be mekayim the other part of the shtar and acquire the property. Now, Abaye says to him, Mele, by when the Eved acquires himself, just like every get for a woman, we find that when a woman brings the get, her own get, and says b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtam, she is believed to be mekayim the get, and the get is effective. So too, when the Eved says b'fanei nichtav, b'fanei nechtav, he could redeem himself. But l'chayr by nechasim, we should not allow the nechasim to go to him, because we know by every single kiyum shtaris, whenever you need to verify a shtar, you need to have two edim to be mekayim the shtar. So Abaye argues on Rava and says that it can't go both ways. Then Abaye says, okay, you're right. Since he cannot acquire the nechasim, he also, why? Because you need to have two edim to mekayim the shtar for the nechasim, so automatically he's not going to be able to kind himself to redeem himself. So then Rava says back to him, Me'il nechasim he can't acquire because you need to have kiyum shtaris, but himself he should be able to acquire himself back just like a get isha. So then Rava said that it doesn't, that whether the nusach of the shtar was atzmecha nechasai knuya lecha or kol nechasai knuya lecha, in all these cases when the Eved says b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtav, he acquires himself, but the nechasim he does not acquire. So Rav Ada Bar Masa says to Rava, who does he hold like? So the Gemara says he holds like Reb Shimon, that we have this idea of pagin and debura, we split his words. And we say that in the shtar that said all of the nechasim is kanai, so we say that he is kind for himself, but in regards to the property, that he needs to have two edim to be mekayim the shtar. Now, where do you see this idea of pagin and debura? So we said we brought a Mishnah in Peah, where somebody writes all of his property to his servant. He says, Kol nechasai nesunim lecha, that all my nechasim are given to you. So the din is that the Eved goes free because he's part of the nechasim that the Adin is giving it to him. Now, however, if he's going to leave some of it, he's going to leave, like Rashi says, even if he's going to leave a little bit, so we say that the fact that he's leaving a little bit of it shows maybe he's not so serious, or maybe he's just doing it just to flatter the guy. So the halacha is lo yotza ben chayrin, he does not go free. Why? Because maybe he's still holding on when he's freeing. He's giving some of it, but holding on to that part of it. Maybe he's still holding on to the part of the Adin, of the Eved. So that's of course again. So according to the Tanna Kama holds that if he leaves part of it, then the Eved is stuck. And Shimon says that la'olam, he's always a ben chayrin, even if the master is going to leave part of it. But if he says kol nechasei nesunim lepleini avdi chutz me'echem rebuy shebehen, so then we say that in this case that he leaves more than a little bit of it. So then we see that basically the question is, we see over here that we do not say Palginin Debura. So now the question is, so we see from here that we have the idea of Palginin Debura, that we split the words. So now the Gemara asks, this is what we're holding today. Well, Rabbi Yosef bar Manyumi, Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Yosef bar Manyumi says the name of Rabbi Nachman, Alpha Pishakilis, Rabbi Yosef Reb Shimon, even though that Rabbi Yosef praised Reb Shimon on the Mishnah and Peah, he said, nevertheless, halacha is Rabbi Meir. Now, Rabbi Meir is always the Tanakama, right? Always Tanakama, it usually goes on Rabbi Meir. So he says that even though Reb Shimon said something very nice, the halacha is like Rabbi Meir, that the Eved does not go free. The Tanya, we learned in a Braisa, Kishenemru Dvarim, Rabbi Yosef, when Rabbi Meir and Reb Shimon said the words in front of Rabbi Yosef, Kara alav, they read on Reb Shimon, Amikra Hazeh, this pasuk that says, Sfasayim Yishak Meishav Dvarim Nechaychim. In other words, it's befitting to kiss the lips of Reb Shimon, who said a beautiful thing. Akaponim, Reb Nachman Paskin, the halacha is not like Reb Shimon, but rather the halacha is like Reb Meir, which comes out, the halacha is that we do not say the idea of Palginin Debura. So the question is on Rava, how could you say that we pass on like Reb Shimon, that we say Palginin Debura? Chayra, you don't say Palginin Debura, the halacha is like Reb Meir. So the Gemara asks now, Umi Omer Reb Nachman Hachi, does Reb Nachman really say that we don't apply the idea of Palginin Debura? Rabbi Yosef bar Menyomi, Reb Nachman, Rabbi Yosef bar Menyomi send the name of Reb Nachman. Shchiv Meira. Shchiv Meira means somebody who's like bedridden. He's on his deathbed. He's a chayla that's about to die, and this Shchiv Meira shekosav kol nechosav la'avdei. A Shchiv Meira wrote that all my property is going to go to you. He wrote kol nechosa nesunim lecha, and then what happened is this guy's luck. V'amad, the Shchiv Meira now got better. He became healthier again. So what happens? The poil he gave the nechasim to his eved, but he got better. So the halacha is that choizer b'nechasim, the property goes back to the original owner, to this shchiv meira who got better. Ve'enei choizer b'eved, but the eved that he freed, that doesn't go back. So again, choizer b'nechasim, ve'enei choizer b'eved. And he explains, why does the property go back to the Shchimina? Because it's matnas Shchimina, because this is a gift that the Shchimina gave, and we know the Gemara in Baba Basra says that if a Shchimina gets better, so the halacha is that he gets his whatever he gave the property away because he's about to die, but now that he got better, he had no intention to rescind. Exactly, he has the opportunity to rescind. Now, ve'enei choizer be'eved. However, he cannot free the eved. Why? He can't. Sharei yatsa lov shem ben chayrin, because the name, the idea of a ben chayrin, like Rashi says, v'asli shtabed b'y, and you cannot be mishtabed him. Now, al kaponim, what do we see from here? We see that by the shchimira we say palginin debura. So how could Reb Nachman say la halacha? We don't say palginin debura. Here I see a beferish mishnah or beferish din that Reb Nachman said that by a shchimira, if he gets better, we do palginin debura. We say that this that he left, that he gave away the property, we give it back, and by the ben chayrin, we say that he's free. So we do see palginin debura. So Elam and Rashi says no, it's not a stira Reb Nachman. It's not that he holds one place he's saying palginin debura, one place he doesn't say palginin debura. Elam and Rashi says like this: Hasam, in the case where Reb Nachman paskins like the Meir in the Mishnah and Peah, so he's saying that the reason is Hainu Taima. The reason of Reb Meir is Mishum de Lav Krus Gitahu. This star is not something which could kairis between the Eved and his servant, because the star shichra we're going to learn from Exer Shav, like Rashi says, is similar to the get of Isha. And therefore, it has to be similar, just like a get of Isha has to be, the Torah says, Sefer Krisus, that you need to give a star to a woman which really cuts you off from her. So too, the star shichar has to be something which really cuts off in a way of krisis from the master. So these shtaris that Rameir says, since the Eved is not mentioned beferish, doesn't say clearly, he says, Atzmacho nechasai. So you could say that there's still some type of leftover implication that the Adon is still holding on to, and therefore it comes out that maybe the Adon means that he wants to hold on to the servant. And it's not clear. In other words, like this, basically in short, when we say krisus, it has to be very clear cut that you're cutting ties off, just like by get. You can't give a get to a woman and have implications or ties that you're still connected to her. The same thing with the star shichur. You can't, when you give something, it has to be clear cut that you're severing ties. We have zero relationship, zero connection one to another. Over here, the problem is that it's not that we say pagin and debura. The issue is you have over here is that it's not a krisus get. You need to have something which severs the ties, and here it doesn't sever the ties. So it's not a steer between Rav Nachman that says the halacha zikr meir and this that we said that a shchimera we like split his words, and so too this that Rava said that we merchalak between the dibur the shtar b'fanei nechtav is not it's nothing to do with one place we say pagin and debura, we don't say pagin and debura. The reason why over there it doesn't work is because you need to have a sefer krisus that cuts off totally. Okay.
Why by the shchimera is okay? Why by the shchimera is okay?
Why by the?
Why is it not?
Well, because because the shchimera. So there's a long Rashi over here. Rashi says, we think that it's okay because of pagin and debura. Right. So Rashi says it has nothing to do with pagin and debura. Rather, he's saying is over there the reason why over there by the case of the woman it doesn't work because you need to have sefer krisis, and by the shtar shichur of avadim also you need to have something which severs the relationship. Yeah. So. Again, the shchimera is more clear. Over here, when he says, here there's a different issue. He's very vague in his lashon. He says, "Atzmach nechasai knuya lecha." So that's not a krisus. Shchimera, he's saying that kol nechasai is to you. Then he got better. No. Over there we do say pagin and debura. So we do, because we say pagin and debura by shchimera. Over here,
why over there do we say?
There's a thing.
Why is it a real krisus over there or as opposed to here? Here I understand.
Okay, so pagin and debura, you understand the concept, right? Shaila is, how come over here don't we say pagin and debura? So he says there's nothing to do with pagin and debura because it's a good shaila. I don't think like shchimera has a
krisus. He was giving him all the nechafim, which he himself, the Eved, is also a neches.
All right. Right, that's what he's saying. It has nothing to do with pagin and debura. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So then the Mishnah says, now the Mishnah said that if somebody brings a get, mimakim l'makim in Eretz Yisrael, he brings from place A to place B in Eretz Yisrael. So he does not need to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei nechtam. So the Gemara says like this: Im yesh alav eirurin. If there's going to be protesters, there's going to be people who contest the get in Eretz Yisrael. So the Mishnah said Yiskayim b'cheismav. He should ratify it with signatures, and which means you have to bring other eidim to recognize the signatures in the get, and then that's okay. So the Gemara says, Arer Kama. How many people really contested this get in Eretz Yisrael? So he says, Ilemar Arer Chad, if you're going to say that one person contested and said that the get is not a good get, Nachman Divrei Hakol Ein Arer Pachas Mishnayim. And Nachman says that in order to have for something to be contested, the document has to be brought in front of at least two people have to contest. Ve'elor, so what are you going to say? Arer today, that two people contested it. So now the question is, Trei Ninu. At the end of the day, you have 2 against 2. So my chaz is the samchis. So you're saying like this: if im yeshalav eirin, so the Gemara says, how many eirin are there? If you're going to say there's 2 eirin, so you have 2 edim that are saying that the get is a good get, right? The signatures are a good get. You have 2 edim that are saying the entire get is mezuyif. So the question is, my chaz is the samchis ahani, sumei ahani. Why are you relying on the edim that are being miskayim the chaysmav? Why not rely on the 2 edim that's saying that it's false? Why are you picking one over the other? So rather, ella ar de bral. So this is the truth. This is how we learn the chatchila. But rather, who is contesting it? It's contested by the husband, who claims that the whole get is mezuyif. So what do? You have to bring 2 edim that are going to be makayim the chaysm of the get. Okay, so now we finished Baruch Hashem the first Mishnah with the Gemara Rashi outside, and now we're going to learn the second Mishnah. All right, here this is a case of, like we said, you have a shliach lehilacha, which the husband appointed the shliach to go and give the get, and now he's bringing the get. Maybe get Medinas Hayam. He's bringing the get from Medinas Hayam to Eretz Yisrael, and ve'ene yachol leimar. And we're going to say in a second what that means. He cannot say the words b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. And in front of me it was written, and in front of me it was signed. So the Mishnah says, im yeshalav edim. If he has edim that are signed on the get, so the din is yiskayim b'chaysmav. Let him bring edim who recognize the signatures of the edim, and will be mekayim the signatures. Who will say to these 2 edim will say, we recognize the signatures of the get, and then the woman can get married to somebody else with this get. Now, echad gittin nashim ve'echad shichruri avodim. Sai when it comes to a get of a woman, and sai when it comes to shichruri avodim means if, let's say, a person owns the Evet Kanani and now he wants to release the Evet Kanani, so he has to give this Evet Kanani a shtar shichr. So the halacha is that sai when it comes to gittin nashim, and sai when it comes to shichruri avodim, that you want to be meshacher your Evet Kanani. So the halacha is shavu l'meilech. It has the same halachas in regards to a shliach who brings the get from Eretz Yisrael to Medinas Hayam, ulemevi, or he brings from Medinas Hayam to Eretz Yisrael. In both cases, the shliach la'ilacha has to say b'fanei nichtav u'b'fanei nechtam. And then what he gains over there is that the husband cannot protest anymore and say that the get is pasul or the get is mezuyev, the shtar shichr is mezuyev. Now the Mishnah concludes and says, this is one of the ways that Gittin Nashim and Shechruri Avodim have a similarity, in a sense that they say when you bring the Shtar Shichr from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, or to Chutz La'aretz, or from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, you have to say b'fanei nichtav and b'fanei nechtam, say by Gittin Nashim and say by Gittin Avodim. Okay, that's what the... what? אני לא שומע.
לא שמביאים מארץ ישראל לחוץ לארץ צריך להגיד את זה.
כן. Well, the Tanakh, the Chachamim said in the Mishnah. And based on one of the answers, we said the Chachamim is explaining the Tanakhama. Well, we asked, the Gemara asked on this. Okay, so now the Gemara asks a question. Right. No, but this is just a Pashta Mishnah. The Rav. Okay, so let's see. The Gemara. So what does that mean? The Gemara asks like this. The Gemara mentions that if somebody brings a get from Medinas Hayam to Eretz Yisrael, and what happens? So the Gemara asks, "My eine yachol leimer." What does it mean? He can't say what he can't say the words. So the Gemara says, and we had this Gemara already once. If you're going to tell me that we're talking about a chedesh, which means he cannot speak, he can't hear. So chedesh bar atuye gitu, can a chedesh who cannot hear and cannot speak, is he kosher to be a shliach leilacha to bring a get? But we learned, and this is a Mishnah later on, the Chav Gimel and Aleph, hakol kshein lahavi is a get. Everybody is kosher. Everybody could be a shliach to bring the get for the woman, chutz mechedesh, except for a chedesh sheita v'katan. So we know a chedesh is not somebody that could be a shliach lahilacha. So what does it mean? You can't say that it's going on the chedesh. Now, so Amar Rav Yosef says, hacha mayaskina. What are we dealing with over here? Kagoyin shenasanu la kishu bikech. A very interesting case. And again, like we said this once, the shliach the halacha gave this woman the get when he was a pikeach, which means he was able to speak, he was able to hear. And he gives the get to her, and what happens is, and now he can't say, Hashem made the guy mute in seconds, that he cannot say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So what do? You have to say b'fanei, takanas chachamim, you have to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says is if he cannot say these words b'fanei, so then we say if there's edim in the chsima of the shtar, of the get, so bring two edim, either the same edim that recognize their own signatures or bring other witnesses that recognize their signatures, and then the get is a good get. Okay.
And that's good according to that, to the person that says in Kain, in Lishma.
Yeah.
There was a machlekes.
Yeah, so we brought this Mishnah again. We asked that the chayyur, this Mishnah only goes according to one banda.
Right. So it only goes according to one.
So the Gemara asked this already. The Gemara, in the beginning, we asked this Shiloh. We went back and forth on this Mishnah. Okay, so now the Mishnah says like this: Echad Gittin Daf, Echad Shechrei Avadim. So he said it's equal to Meilech Umevi, that sai when the person brings the Gittin Nashim or the Shechrei Avadim, either from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz or Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, he has to say b'fanei nichtav or b'fanei nechtam. So now the Gemara says, Tara Rabbanan, we learned in a braysa, B'shloisha drachim shavu Gittin Nashim the Shechrei Avadim. 3 ways the get of the woman is very similar to the shtar of Shechrei Avadim. Number 1, how is it similar? Shavu l'meilech. It's similar, as the Mishnah said, to Melech and Mevi, that you have to say B'fanai in both cases. Number 2, V'chol get, Sheish Olav 8 kusi, any get. Now, get over here means any document, not only a get like we say get, but any document that has a chasima of 8 kuti, which we spoke about this. The kutim were basically, they became gedim, but they came Gittin because there was lions that attacked them, and they were very, very scared of the Bnei Yisrael, so they came Gittin. Now it's a machlekes b'chlal if they're Gittin emes or not Gittin emes. So we say that according to the opinion that holds that the kutim are Gittin emes, but we're still worried that they might lie. So they made a gzeira that the kutim cannot sign on a document. So the first thing is he says that it's similar to Melech HaMevi. Number 2, v'chol get, sheish alav 8 kuti, any get that has an 8 kuti is puzzle. Except for chutz migidin nashim v'shechrei avadim, except for when it comes to the get of a nashim or shechrei avadim, that in both cases, if you have one 8 who's a kuti, the get or the shtar shikhr will still be kosher. Number 3, v'chol hashtares ha'ilim bar kois shel evdei kechavim. The third thing is that any document that are produced in a goyish court, which is our kois, so the halacha is that, in other words, you have documents that are produced in goyish courts, so the halacha is avabi shechois mehen evdei kechavim, even though that you have documents that was produced by goyim, in the goyish court, and it's signed by goyim, the halacha is kshedim, these documents are kosher. In other words, that you could use this in a beis din, you could use goyish documents to prove your case. However, except in the case of a bill of divorce and shtar shikhr, that these documents are not valid if they're prepared by goyim. Now, another opinion, he says, Ukedivrei Reb Meir ba'arba. So this Brisa says that the Brisa said that 3 ways a Gittin Nashim and Shechrei Avadim are similar, and now the Brisa says that Ukedivrei Reb Meir, Reb Meir's opinion is that the Rishonim asked the Ritva, the Ran, they ask, why does the Brisa give a very funny expression, Ukedivrei, not just say Uda Meir? So he says like this, Ukedivrei Meir, according to Meir is going to say that the Gittin Nashim and the Shechrei Avadim are similar to the similar together, Ba'arba in four ideas. Now, what's his 4th idea? So he says, we have a Mishnah later on, Dafid Aleph and Beis. The Mishnah says like this: Ha'omer, when the Shliach Le'alacha says, 10 get zeli ishti, give this get to my wife. And also he says, Shtar shichrur zela avdi, give the shtar shichrur to my servants. And they gave the get, or they gave the shtar shichrur. So now the Shliach Le'alacha still has either the get or the shtar shichrur. So the halacha is, the Mishnah says over there, Ratza lachzer b'shneim, if That's the difference between a shliach leilach and a shliach lekabbalah. If the shliach now has the get and the mishaleach now wants to retract, the halacha is that he could retract before the get actually went into the woman's hand or the shtar shichur went into the hands of the eved yachzer. These are the words of Rameir. And the Chachamim over there argue on Rameir, and they hold that only in the case of the get could the person retract, but in the shtar shichur he can't. Why? So what comes out that according to Rameir, what's the fourth thing that they're equal is that, at least according to Rameir the Tanakama, is what comes out that in the case of a shtar shichur, if a person says ten zeged leishti, shtar shichur zel avdi, if he wants, he could retract in both cases. So what do we see? That they're similar. And Rameir holds that they can retract in both cases. Again, the Chacham argue on Rameir and hold that only in a get you can retract, but not in a shtar shichur. So according to Rameir, there's four things. This is a fourth thing that a Gittin Daf and Shechur Avadim are very similar. And will come out according to the Chacham that there's only three. So now, fine. So this is the total brisa. So now the Gemara wants to dissect this brisa. So he says, Bishleim Rabbanan, granted according to the Chachamim, who hold that there's three. So in Yana Lemute Had Rameir, whenever the brisa says, it's like you have in the beginning of Arba, the Mishnah says by Baba Kama, Arba of is Nezikin. There are four types of Nezikin, right? Ashur, Arba, Ramav, whatever. So the obvious question is, I don't know that there's four. I can't count 1, 2, 3, 4. Why does the Mishnah have to go and tell me there's four? So there's diukim there. So when I say a number, I'm saying dafke these and not these. So same thing over here. The Mishnah, the Brisa said, the lashon of the Brisa was, why do you have to use the lashon three? They tell me dafke in these three ways, but you should know there might be a fourth way you could think, and we don't say that. What is that? What is that fourth way? That fourth way is the case of when he says 10 getz ishti or shtar shichur la'avdi, that you could retract. So he's going to hold, the first opinion is going to hold that the Chachamim that only by a get you could retract, but not by a shtar shichur. So the Mutei Had Rameir. But the question is, Ela Rameir, but according to Rameir, why does the Brisa say, there's four, I can count it? So the Gemara says, the Mutei Had Tanya will come to exclude another case in the Brisa. What's the Brisa? The Brisa says, Adam. If you have witnesses that need a sign on a document, however, she'ein yoidim lachten, they don't know how to write their names. So what do? Mekaran lahem, you sketch out on the paper, you sketch out, what do you call it? Not underline, tracing, yeah? You sketch out their names. And what do? Mimalim es akroim, and they fill basically their names with ink. And then it comes out the Edom are signing on the shtar. Now, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, when do we say that you could sketch out, you can etch it, is Gittin Daf. That they were makel by, we don't want the woman to be an aguna, so they were makel and said that you could sign the documents in such a manner. When it comes to Shechuri Avadim, Rishar, Kol Shtaris, and other Shtaris, so then the din is like this. Im Yoidim, Likreis, Velachtim, if they know how to read and to sign the shtar, Choismin, they could sign the shtar. Im Lav, if not, Ein Choismin. In other words, so what comes out from here? So what comes out is that Rameir agrees with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel that Gittin and Shtar Shichrim are different with regard to this issue, and he mentioned in this number to exclude the possibility that the halacha is stated by the first Tanakam of the Brisa applies to both these types, and in other words, by Shechruri Avadim and Shechruri Nashim, Gittin Nashim and Shechruri Avadim. You would think that you could etch out your names. So Kamash Mulan, he's telling us that only these four cases, but in the case of etching out, that only will work by Gittin Nashim, but not by a Shtar Shichur. So now the Gemara asks, Kriya Man Dechar Shmei. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said that something about reading. So the Gemara says, who mentioned anything about reading? Why does Rabbi Shimon Gamliel mention the need for the witnesses to be able to read when he's discussing about witnesses who don't know how to sign? We're talking about signing and you're saying about reading. So the Gemara says, really, the Bryce is incomplete and it's missing words. And you have to say, Eidim shen yedim likris. If you have witnesses who don't know how to read, first of all, we have to read the document in their presence and they sign it. Now, if they do not know how to sign it, so what do you do? You tear, like you sketch it, and they fill in the ink in their names. So now that we fixed up the Brisa, it's clear that Rav Shimon Gamliel was responding to the statement of the previous Tana. So now the Gemara asks, V'su leka, you're telling me there's no other cases that Gittin Nashim and Shechuri Avodim are similar? You have a case of Ha'omer Tnu Get Zeli Ishti Ushtar Shechur Zela Avdi. This is later on, we're going to learn in a few days, Nafid Gimel, that if a person tells his friend, give this get to my wife, and also, or give this shtar shikhr to my servant, umeis, and now the Mishalech died before the shtar was given. So the Mishnah says, Lo yitnu la'achar misa, the shliach is not allowed to give this after the person died. Now, if he said, Tnu mana lepleni, go give $100 to this person, umeis, and then he died, yitnu la'achar misa, so the din is that the shliach could go ahead and actually give it after Misa. So what do I see from this price? I see that in the case of Shtar Shikhr and the Get Li'ishti, they have the same din, that after they die, if the get was not received by the Mekabel, the Shliach cannot go ahead and actually give the get. So the Gemara answers and says, Tiktani milsa de lesse b'shtaris. When the Brisa teaches the way in which a get is similar to Shtar Shikhr, it's referring only to matter that does not apply to typical documents. Milsa de isa b'shtaris, but things that apply to typical documents, loi ketani do not teach. And the Gemara explains what that means. The Shalach Rav Mishmeid Rabavo, Rav Avin sent from Eretz Yisrael in the name of Rabavo. Have a yoidin, you should know. Sheshalach Rabbi Lazar Geilim Mishum Rabbeinu, that Rabbi Lazar sent this teaching to Bavel in the name of his teacher Rabbi Yonasan. What was the teaching? He said, Shchimena Shomar Kisvu Tnu Mana Lepleni. If a Shchimena writes a deed of transfer, and he says, give it with 100 dinars to so and so, and then he dies, so the halacha is Ein Kaisum V'Neistin. One does not write and give the get to the document. Why not? Because maybe the Shchimena only wanted to be makne the money with a shtar. After it's written in the shtar, then I'll be makne the money. But the din is that there's never a deed of transfer written after the death. So this shows us that other documents are also not written after one's death, which means that this halacha is not specific dafka to shtar shikhr or dafka to a get. So therefore, it's not listed amongst the ways that these two documents are similar. Fred,
is this dafka by Kaisun when he says to write it? What happens if the shtar is already written? That I want to give 100 to this person.
Yeah.
He's a shchimmer. He's sending it just like a get, where he's giving it over to shliach lacha. And why does he use the word Kaisun over here? Why can't it be a ready document already? I don't understand what's the difference by saying Kaisun.
Again, it's all he said that you should write it, but the pile was never done.
Well, let's say it was written, and he gives it to the person. Will it
should work. Yeah.
So it's different than by a get, because by a get, if he dies, it's not going to. He won't give it.
If the woman got it already, it will be chal.
No, the woman didn't get it. So it's different than by a get, because by a get you're saying that if he dies, it terminates, and it's not like as if he. But whereas if he's a shchidman.
Yeah, but it's also you have a klal zachan adam shlei b'fanav. It's also a din by the woman. It's not a schiyah. Okay, we're going to learn. I think we'll learn this later.
I want to understand why Kaisun makes a difference over here.
Why is Kaisun? He says kisvu tnu, write the get, and just telling you the.
Why does it have to be kisvu?
You're asking if it was already written.
Document, and he's giving it to the guy. He says, "Here, you take this. I'm a shchimman. I'm giving it over. Give this document that you will receive $100 or whatever it is," and then he dies. You know what I'm saying? So does that person get that $100 or not?
So I don't know. Maybe it's a diak dafka kisvu. I don't know. Okay, so Fred the Gemara v'ikol lishma bad l'cher, you have a din of lishma, that the that Sai, the Shtar Shicher, and Sai, the get have to be written for the sake of the woman. So why isn't this included in part of the things that's similar? 3 things or 4 things. So the Gemara answers and says, so not like this. Bishtem the Rabba, Mela according to Rabba, who holds that the reason why you have to say b'fani nechtav is because the fishem became the Shema, so Hainu Melech, or maybe. So this is included in the statement when you say the 2 documents are similar with regards to the halachas of delivering and bringing. He maintains that the requirement to write the documents is primary for is lishma. So by saying basically Melech or maybe you're saying you're mentioning lishma. El Rava, but according to Rava, opinion of Rava who holds that the reason is to be Mekayim Mishtar, so the Chayre Kasha will be a Shaila. Why didn't he mention it? So the Gemara says, Vasu, another question. Bein the Rava, bein the Rava. Say according to the opinion of Rabba and Rava, the Chayre Ha'ika Mechuber. There's a case when the get was written and signed while they were attached to the ground. In other words, let's say you have a leaf. The leaf was attached to a tree, and you cannot write a shtar shicher and a shtar a get on a leaf that's attached to the ground, mechuber. So why didn't the Mishnah or the Brisa teach also a similarity between these 2 cases, that if it's mechuber the karka you can't use it? So the Gemara says, ki ktani psula d'Rabbanan. So he says like this: when the Mishnah mentioned, Brisa mentioned cases, he's mentioning psula d'Rabbanan. The Iraisa loy ktani. He did not mention things which are invalidated by midei raisa. So since these 2 cases, in other words, that these documents not written for the lishma or when they're attached to the ground are not valid midei raisa, the Brisa does not mention it. So now the Gemara asks another question about arkois shel goyim, but there's an example of documents written in a goyish court, the psula dei raisa hu, which according to midei raisa they're mamish pastel, uktani, and yet the Brisa teaches this halacha. So the Gemara says like this. Be'edim Mesida, this is referring to when you gave a get, as we said 2 days ago, there's machlekes of Edim Mesida karti or Edim Chasima karti. Now, according to Rabbi Lazar, you have machlekes Rabbi Lazar and Meir. Rabbi Lazar is going to hold that midei raisa Edim Mesida karti. That what constitutes the get is when the 2 Edim that saw the husband give over to the wife, that constitutes the divorce. So you're asking by our cause that if you have documents, the Goyish Accord of Psul Deraisa, he's going to say that Edim Mesira, he holds the opinion of Edim Mesira, like Rabbi Lazar says, Edim Mesira Karti. So therefore, this bill of divorce that was signed in a Goyish Accord is only Asr, it's only Asr Me Dirabana, not Me Deraisa. So the Gemara asks, but now that we learned in the Seifa, Reb Shimon says even these, in other words, the shtar shicher and shtar get, and the get are valid. Reb Zeir says, Reb Shimon Reb Lazar, and he says Reb Zeir said that Reb Shimon accepted the opinion of Reb Lazar, who said the Amar Edim Mesire Karti, who holds that the halacha is Edim Mesire are the ones that kairis. So Mechlal, it implies that Tanakama Savar Loi. It implies that the Tanakama holds that we don't hold that. Instead, he holds that it's really the Eidei Chasime Karti. So even so, this Tana listed the cases where a get from a Goyish courts are puzzle, despite the fact they are puzzle midei raisa. So the Gemara says, Daf Yud Amud Aleph, Ike Beinayu Shemus Muvakin. He says that the difference between the Tanakam and Reb Shimon is in the case of when you have Goyish names. Okay, so now the Gemara asks, V'chazra deiraisa ktani, but the halacha of Chazara is midiraisa, and according to the opinion of Rameir, the husband could retract his instruction to give this get, and the master could take back his instructions to give the shtar shicher, canceling the shlichus. And uktani, yet the Brisa teaches it amongst the ways in which they're equal. So the Chayra comes out that the Tana does not distinguish between a case that applies to Deiraisa and the Rabbanan. So the Gemara changes his answer. Rather, when the Brisa teaches these ways that are equal, it's milsa the lesser b'kiddushin. It's matters that do not apply with regards to kiddushin. But milsa the isur b'kiddushin, matters which do apply kiddushin, like Tani, which do not teach it. So but this whole din of chazara is taught in kiddushin. So the Gemara says no, there's a difference. B'shlichus ba'al karcha. In regards to shlichus, in regards to the that you can't do ba'al karcha. The b'gerushin isa b'kiddushin lesa, which means that if a person appointed a shliach for the in other words, let's say to be mekadesh a woman against her will or free a slave against his will, so that doesn't work. But in regards to divorce, it's a valid shlichus, because a get does not need to be given with the Raisa with the woman's consent, but with regards to the Gittin, with the kiddushin, then it does. Okay, let's take like a 2-minute break. I can just drink and then we'll do the next element.